Overnight, Russia launched one of the largest attacks on Ukraine since the start of the war. At least 3 people were killed and dozens more injured. In response, Ukrainian President Zelensky called out the West to finally do something, saying, quote, America, Europe, and everyone around the world can stop this war together by pressuring Russia. If someone is not applying pressure, that is complicity and accountability. All this just a day after President Trump likened the 3-year war to 2 kids who just need to, quote, fight for a while. Joining us now, president and founder of Eurasia Group and G0 Media, Ian Bremmer. So if you just let them fight for a while, how long does it take?
Been 3.5 years, Katie, and it doesn't look like it's ending anytime soon. Certainly, you wouldn't call the Americans complicit in this environment. We are providing real-time intelligence to the Ukrainians, helping them defend themselves and target the Russians. Major military support, American weapons systems, absolutely critical for Ukraine. Those things were both suspended briefly after that shambolic meeting that Trump had with Zelensky in the Oval Office, but only for a number of days. And they are back on track, including with NATO allies, as you saw with Trump's meeting with the German Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, just yesterday. So we do see generally more alignment on this war between the U.S., the Ukrainians, and the allies. What we don't see is any possibility of it ending anytime soon.
Russia launched an attack. They're not saying that's the retribution for what Ukraine did. I wonder, in the scheme of things, how significant ultimately it's going to be that Ukraine was able to pull off that attack, that low-budget attack across Russia on many of their bombers?
I think it's very significant. It's very significant that Trump has not explicitly criticized Ukraine for that successful attack, far more spectacular than anything else Ukraine had pulled off in the 3.5 years of the war. These are $300 drones taking out $100+ million Russian bombers. That's, 300,000 to 1 return. The asymmetry of that capacity is unprecedented. And if you're Putin, it's not the sanctions that are making you second guess your decisions. I mean, the United States under the Biden administration had plenty of stick towards Russia, didn't have any impact on Putin at all. Trump trying carrot with Putin, that's not impacting him either. But the Ukrainians showing that they can do real military damage to the Russian capabilities, not just on Ukraine, but globally, that might make a difference. And that's interesting to watch, Katie.
Okay, I want to ask you also about Donald Trump and China and this news that Donald Trump just came out with, that his top economic leaders are going to be meeting with China. Let me read you the Truth Social. I'm pleased to announce that the Secretary of Treasury, Scott Bessent, Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, and United States Trade Rep, Ambassador Jameson Greer, will be meeting in London on Monday, June 9th, with representatives of China to talk about these tariffs. How do you level set for that?
Second big meeting after the Geneva meetings that 2 of those 3 had with the Chinese Treasury Secretary and U.S. Trade Rep, and coming on the back of a conversation that Trump just had directly with Xi Jinping. He asked for that call. Xi Jinping granted it. And certainly that gives us a possibility of stabilizing the relationship. But we have to recognize this comes in the context of Trump still focusing on taking China out of the supply chains and the advanced technologies of all of America's core allies. They want Chinese transshipment of goods out of Mexico, out of India, out of Southeast Asia. They want the Europeans, the Japanese, and South Koreans to work with the Americans on AI and supply chain for critical minerals, and not with the Chinese. So if you're Beijing leadership, this feels like containment. This feels like a much broader decoupling, and that's what the Chinese are focusing on too. So we can take a breath that there is a level of perhaps greater stability for now in the U.S.-China relationship, but the overall trajectory, I'm afraid, is still pretty negative.
How do you factor AI into this?
Well, there are only 2 big countries and their companies that have global reach on AI. No one else is close. The United States and China. The Chinese government has the overwhelming control in how AI is being deployed and rolled out. U.S. corporations have overwhelming influence and capacity. Those are two very, very different things. In the United States, the regulatory environment is largely captured by the private sector. In China, it's the state that captures the corporations. In neither of those countries is it clear that the taxpayers are the ones that ultimately will benefit. The Europeans are the ones that are trying to put regulations in place that will help ensure the taxpayers aren't taken advantage of, but that has slowed their AI growth. And as a consequence, they're completely uncompetitive in the space. So that's the way I think about it geopolitically.
So you have AI, and I've got one more question for you. And this is Donald Trump's intentions and goals, and whether he's meeting the ultimate goal of national security here in the United States. There's a lot of, obviously, interest in the Elon Musk feud. It's, get your popcorn out. It's delicious to watch. But at the same time, I mean, there's some real national security implications of a breach between these two men.
Well, there's a big national security implication if it turns out that Elon has grabbed a lot of information with his own AI about the U.S. government, about American citizens, and he's now running his AI on it. That would be a big advantage for xAI. I have no reason to believe that he's done that, but we have no evidence or accountability or oversight that he hasn't. We're much more likely to get that kind of accountability if there is a long-standing rift between these two men. So in that regard, it's important. I mean, the biggest national security concern is that this guy, who's not only the wealthiest person in the world, but also runs advanced technology companies, also at the same time had the most important access inside the White House. He was meeting with global leaders like Narendra Modi, and the president of the United States didn't even know if they were discussing advancing business interests or official interests. Of course, that's a clear national security concern. It implies a level of kleptocracy in the United States. Having Elon no longer with that conflict of interest at the highest levels clearly is a better thing for the American voters.